Welcome into Betting the Pitch, episode number 196. I'm your host, the real underscore G Warner, and this is a Champions League, Europa Conference League episode. Gonna pick an ultimate best bet end of show. Stick around. I do not have a promo code to give you for pregame.com, but certainly want to shout out my Patreon. Also want to welcome another member into the 3-month club. Appreciate all the support over there. If you're a Patreon subscriber, you get pretty much everything I'm putting out there. All my leans when I lock them in, everything you could ask for. I hope. I mean, at least I've been trying to get as much feedback as possible. Of course, any of you that are on there, please slide in the DMs or wherever you can reach me. Happy to change or do anything that you'd like. I've been asked to outline juices and to give a favorite pick of all for the day, things of those natures. So trying to do that a little bit more going forward. I'm here to help you guys, but also it really helps me to communicate with you all and to get my thoughts out there, and then hopefully turn those into winners. Really avoiding the losers is what I'm shooting for most, but also to make sure that the ones that do win end up on the card. So on this episode, we're going to go through Champions League, 2 advanced numbers, the matches, and their spreads and totals, plus Europa League, and we have those for Europa Conference League as well. And I think it's going to be a great show. Champions League and pretty much all the European competitions have been great to me so far this season. Going to try to keep that going as long as possible. All lines on this quoted in this podcast are courtesy of betonline.ag, my favorite place to get my bets down early. Reduced juice is offered on almost every game you want to bet right up until game time. Please follow the link found in the podcast description to fund your account. Use the promo code GW50 to receive a 50% match bonus up to $1,000. So now that you got some extra money in your account, go use that promo code. If you don't have a BetOnline account, I highly recommend having as many outs or options to bet as possible. Get the best number. That's a big deal to being profitable over the long term, because most bettors are not. And that's what we're trying to shoot for, is to make profits. Be nice to retire, quit our actual jobs, but it's a tough game for that. But ultimately, trying to put a little bit more money in your pocket while watching sports that you love. That's the goal here, and that's what we're doing on Betting the Pitch number 196. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe. Having a lot more views on there lately, and I'm trying to keep that going as well. But let's just get into it without further ado. We're going to start with Champions League. That seems to be a little bit more decided in one case, a little bit less in others. We'll start with a more decided one because that's a Tuesday matchup. That's Inter Milan hosting Milan, a big Milan derby. I don't really know what the name is for in Italy. I wish I did. But currently Inter Milan with a 2-0 first leg victory in their quote unquote away game, where AC Milan had more of the tickets. I'll be referring to AC Milan as Milan and Inter Milan as Inter for this episode, as they do, and just even look at their Twitters if you don't trust me. But Inter in a great run of form, had a really nice cover with 3-0 lead. Fell behind, or I guess against the spread fell behind, but almost choked it away. We're up 3-2 on Sassuolo, good goal scoring team that has kind of had Inter's number for a long time. But Romelu Lukaku was awesome. Honestly, I feel like he should be starting probably over Edin Dzeko, but probably won't happen because it's been working really well in the league. He and Correa, who just shouldn't be playing at all, but you got to give some rest to Dzeko's old legs and also to Lautaro. Keep him as sharp as possible for this competition. Things are going great for Simone Inzaghi, so I'm not sure he's going to change much. But Inter with a 2-0 lead on aggregate, no away goals. That doesn't matter here. But now Inter get all the tickets, or more of the tickets. I think 75% they get. And that's a big deal because it's going to be really hard for AC Milan, who are so banged up. Had a really tough loss this weekend, didn't get a penalty, and then ended up losing, conceding a goal, and then conceding a really nice free kick from an Inter youth player. So that wasn't great for them. I don't know the status of Rafael Leao at this point, but I don't feel great that he wasn't available, because the Serie A match mattered this weekend at Spezia. And that, I'm pretty sure if he was available, he certainly would have at least made the bench or maybe come on as a substitute. Hard for me to see him, especially with a 2-0 deficit coming on and playing for Milan, which also makes me wonder if he's going to stick around and might end up leaving. But with that all said, we currently have, this is a Tuesday match, Milan have to come from 2 goals behind, but they're an underdog, which is a pretty nice situation. If they do win the match 1-0, for example, Inter Milan are probably defending in the final minutes, not really trying to score, just trying to run out the clock to advance. I don't think they want to take the risk of this going to extra time, though, because that's where better teams are known to lose. Just ask Man City about that last year, or really any team that plays Real Madrid last year played in the past. Currently, Inter Milan, a quarter goal favorite at home, quote unquote home, minus 122. So all the juice right now in Inter might climb to a half of a goal, which is what I was expecting it to be. I don't know, just because whenever the losing team can win the match, clearly cover the spread as an underdog, but not advance or not even force extra time, that's a weird position to be in, unfortunately. So I'm not sure that I mean, there's certainly, you could argue there's value in AC Milan. The problem is that they lost Benacer to a knee injury, who I think had surgery in the last few days. Rafael Leao, don't really expect him to play more than as a substitute at best. Maybe he starts, but that seems really risky, especially for a competition they're already down 2-0 in. I know there's a lot of embarrassment that would come from being eliminated by your city rival in the semifinal of the Champions League, but I think Milan, after winning the Scudetto last season, they should probably have an idea of kind of where they are. And that last year, I'm not going to call it a fluke, but it kind of felt like one. Over under this one is 2.25, juice to the over with all the juice there. Might climb to 2.5 before this kicks off. I have an interest in the under there because I don't really trust the Inter Milan offense, I got to say, and they're the favorite at home, really trying to clutch on and hang on to a 2-0 lead. We saw them against Porto, I believe it was, in the last round or a couple rounds ago, with a slender only 1-goal advantage, and then just hold on for a goalless draw, if I remember correctly, in the second leg. I feel like it's probably going to be a similar plan. I honestly feel like even if AC Milan somehow got 2 goals to even out the tie, I feel like Inter Milan would still feel pretty confident that they would be able to go through, score in regulation or in extra time. But certainly that wouldn't be a comfortable situation. I just feel like AC Milan on the US broadcast, I rarely catch that post game, but one of the guys was talking about how AC Milan has no one that can scare you. And I agree, especially if Rafael is not out there. And even then, if he's not 100%, I feel like there's so much lacking from AC Milan. They did their best, played a pretty strong lineup this weekend, still did very little, created very little against Spezia, who's fighting relegation in Serie A. So it's just a big class disadvantage here. Inter Milan have been smoking Milan for years now, it feels like. Last year's Scudetto was ridiculous, but somehow worked out. And Simone Inzaghi is still fighting for his job. I don't know that matters to the players as much, but they want to win the Champions League. They don't want to mess with going to extra time. I don't necessarily, I mean, Inter Milan, ever since Antonio Conte was there, they were fine with sitting back and counterattacking. So as a favorite, that's really a weird situation to be in. I want, if I'm betting a favorite, to have the ball more, because that means more chances on goal. Certainly they're not as high XG expected goals as you would be on a counterattack, but I just don't see a lot of ways for Milan to score here, which makes me pretty disinterested in the quarter of a goal if they're an underdog right now, even getting odds, even if it climbs to a half where they draw in this match, get eliminated with a draw, and cover the spread. I don't know that I feel good enough. I feel like Inter can still win this match. I think under 2.25 is my strongest lean for right now. I don't know that it's one that I feel great about. Certainly I get more interested as it hits 2.5 and climbs from there, because this is a series that should be pretty low scoring, but ultimately Milan know they have to score. They're probably going to be out in the open trying to score goals, overextending, because they know that they have to in order to get chances on goal. That's a problem because Inter are great on the counterattack. They don't have as much pace, I think. Denzel Dumfries would argue that as a wingback, but in terms of their strikers, I mean, Romelu Lukaku, when he comes in as a substitute, as I would expect, with 60 minutes off the clock, he'll be in a great position to score. And if AC Milan haven't really punctured Inter, I think it's a really tough spot for AC Milan. I think if I'm going to back Milan as an underdog, I need to feel like they're going to score, and I don't feel that way. So I feel like under 2.25 is my strongest lean in that one. As for the 2 advanced number, gigantic. AC Milan has moved to 9-1. Let me check I'll give you the tail of the tape on that one. So first lines that I had seen, Inter, a very slight -122 favorite, climbed all the way to -158, as high as 160, I guess is what I had seen. AC Milan closing 135, at least when I was tracking it. And now 135 plus 135 at home in the first leg has turned to 9-1. Inter, a 1-16 favorite to advance. So clearly the odds makers are not expecting too much. I mean, it's got to be a big number because you don't want to give free money away for a team with a huge advantage. And clearly a huge handle for Bet Online, and I'm sure all the other books out there as well. Not suggesting really you bet into that. I think if you really like Milan and like them to advance, I might just take the quarter or them to win in regulation at plus 270. $100 wins 270. I feel like that's the way you should go if you're feeling that one. Now we'll move to Wednesday, and this matchup is totally up in the air. Real Madrid with a great goal to take a lead. Unfortunately, also conceded a great goal to Kevin De Bruyne, and took a 1-1 draw in the first leg, which to me was great because it covered the spread, but it was not great for Real Madrid because unfortunately now they have to go to the Etihad and get a result, at least to force extra time. They probably wanted to lead and to hold on to it, but after watching these two teams match up last year, it was really difficult for Man City to get through. Really, they collapsed late and then gave up a really bad penalty. I think Ruben Dias did to Karim Benzema in extra time, and everything, the floodgates opened, and Manchester City looked like, again, just the competition they could not conquer. With that said, a 1-1 aggregate result, I think Man City was pretty confident and happy about that. Then took care of business this weekend with Everton. Real Madrid did sort of the same, but rotated quite a bit. Manchester City rotated as well, but still played Erling Haaland and some of the other more important players. Seemed like they certainly rotated their wingers. Grealish and Bernardo Silva came on late. Gundogan was awesome and seems to be like the heart and soul of that team, really, without getting a lot of credit. But ultimately won them the match this weekend by far. When I look at this number, I'll get to it now. Manchester City currently a 1-goal favorite, with more of the juice on Real Madrid right now, but coming down, more more Manchester City money has been coming in since I've been tracking it. Not changing much, just a few cents on the juice, but does give me some hope that Real Madrid are going to climb to even higher than 1, maybe 1.25. And I'm still pretty interested, even with the push on +1. That's a huge thing for me in this sport. Over-under is 3, also offering a very nice push if you like under there, with -116 right now. So more of the juice on both Real Madrid and the under. But those are both the ways that I lean in this one. And here's why. I feel like Manchester City, it's still a really big hurdle for them in this competition because they're not used to performing well in it. They just aren't. Real Madrid are a team you really don't want to give any sort of like spread as an underdog. I gotta say, clearly, I mean, who is Real Madrid an underdog to in this world right now? I guess on the road, maybe at Anfield, they could be for Liverpool, but probably not. Maybe on the road at Manchester United, I guess, maybe on the road at Arsenal, but like we're talking only the biggest teams in the world. I guess on the road at Barcelona, certainly, but also so I think Barcelona and Manchester City, certainly they'd be underdogs, but only a handful of other teams, maybe Bayern Munchen in Germany, Dortmund, maybe. But ultimately, Real Madrid are a great side, especially when you get a +1 on them. And they have two of the most important players and the best players in the world who have shown they could do it in this competition when they won it last year. Karim Benzema, still one of the best finishers out there, as well as Vinny Jr., who is unstoppable. Kyle Walker seems to be, and I guess Barcelona kind of learned how to really, they just assigned Ronald Araujo on him just as single coverage, it seemed, and he did a pretty good job of keeping him quiet. I don't really think that Pep Guardiola would take that from Barcelona, though he's a Barcelona guy and does love to kind of throw different things at people. And maybe he kind of played a little bit of possum and didn't really use that in the first leg, just seeing if they could win on the road and not have to worry about the second leg. Well, they got to worry about this one. And I do think that nervousness and the pressure of being the best team and really shooting, because 5 out of 6 Premier Leagues isn't really their cup of tea. They're most worried about the Champions League. And I do feel like those nerves and pressures do affect the players a little bit when it's something they haven't done before. I'm not sure that it does. Like, it certainly will affect teams in the relegation fight that aren't prepared for it. But if you kind of know what's coming, maybe not so much. I feel like affecting European qualifiers, not so much, because you're expecting to compete in that area and ultimately you need to win and earn points for it. But this, I feel like everyone expects Manchester City to win this whole thing. They have the entire competition. And this is a really, really tough Real Madrid side who are in a great situation when they get to counterattack a side like Man City. You're going to have the ball the whole time. And I felt during periods of that first leg, yes, it was in the Bernabeu in Madrid with a huge fan base behind Real Madrid. But there's times during the match where I felt like Real Madrid were in control, then took a lead and honestly looked like they might have held on to it for a long time. Two great goals from outside the box, so hard to say that one was more important or better than the other, or more likely or less likely. Two great shots could have ended goalless as well. But I also feel like that also points to Real Madrid playing really close despite being at the Etihad. They've struggled here mainly, I think, last time I remember was a really bad pass from Varane to Courtois or vice versa. I think it was Courtois' fault that ended up leading to a goal, and then the floodgates opened. And so Real Madrid need to do a lot to stay away from that. But I'm very interested in Real Madrid getting that full goal of insurance right now, +1. I don't expect to lose that, though the juice is a little bit more on the Real Madrid side right now. For the under, I like under 3 as well. And I feel like they're very correlated because I don't really know that in a very high scoring match in regulation, that if this goes over, Real Madrid is less and less likely to cover. I think that's pretty obvious based on just correlated parlays and things of that nature. There's probably a little more safety in Real Madrid if you play under 3, because a 2-0 victory for Manchester City will cover the under while losing the underdog. But there's a situation where a 2-2 final and Real Madrid get that +1, they cover the spread and the overhits. So could go both ways and try to potentially even win both on a 1-1, a 0-0, a 1-0 Manchester City victory, which would push you on the +1 against the spread. But we also might see a +1.25 before this kicks off. I wouldn't be shocked by that, though it does feel like a little bit more exaggerated of a number considering Real Madrid were only a quarter goal underdog in the first leg. So now I'll go through and I guess mention or talk about the two advanced numbers, which I think are just reasonable to talk about here. Real Madrid currently a +245 underdog to get through. 100 wins you 245. Manchester City 1-3, so a -300 favorite. And this started as Manchester City a -260 favorite when I was first tracking it, with Real Madrid +215. Unfortunately, Real Madrid lost home. Didn't bring an advantage from the Bernabeu on the road. So they should have been higher as an underdog, but it's only really climbed to +245 as we see it. I saw as high as 250, and the -300 on Manchester City, not a huge jump from -260, certainly a jump, but not a huge one. And I feel like there's been some money coming in on Real Madrid. This might be closer. It also might be the line kind of shrinking a little bit because they realize that if they're going to attract bets, they probably need to give a little bit of love to the better and not have such a huge handle or take rate. I don't know necessarily that I feel strong enough that Real Madrid are going to go on the road and advance here, though. Manchester City certainly have not been a trustworthy side in this competition, have not won it, which is certainly a very high standard, and did get to the final to lose to Chelsea a few years ago. But I think Real Madrid have a shot here. So I'm very interested in that +1 and also the under 3. I'm going to go with Real Madrid +1 as my best bet for the Champions League. And now it's time to get into the Europa League, which I do have a play outstanding on this one, or one that's pending is probably a better way to say it. I'll start, though, with Sevilla and Juventus. 1-1 draw in the first leg. And I really like Sevilla, and I'm still kicking myself for not playing it. Easy to say after seeing a result, but I just felt like that was the side I wanted. I was looking for a +1 and I never got it. I ended up seeing Sevilla as a 3/4 goal underdog, which I think is where it closed. It was pretty juiced the whole time. And they really controlled a lot of the match. And Sevilla somehow have turned around, even though the guy that brought in the players is no longer there, and Sampaoli. But ultimately, Mendilibar has been having a ton of success. Whether it's all deserved, I'm not sure. Certainly playing against some of the bottom clubs in La Liga has helped, but no shame in knocking out Manchester United, especially coming from down 2-0 on the road at Old Trafford, stealing a draw, and then dominating the second leg at home. Now they're at home here. Nunca te rindas. They have the Never Give Up and La Nervión behind them, and it's going to be a really tough situation for Juventus, who unfortunately have been dealing with injuries for what feels like 3 years now, ever since COVID, ever since I've been really paying attention. They've been one of the most banged up teams out there. This weekend didn't really play their best players, did play some, but this is a tough competition, and they're going for it. But as are Sevilla, and this is a comfortable situation for Sevilla, who have returned Lucas Ocampos and other players who've been really important to them. And they're just a lot better team than they were, and they've had to go through some growing pains. We're in the relegation spat in La Liga for a while, but have ultimately improved, and I think are playing a lot better now. Currently, Sevilla a pick'em, though it's very juiced right now at the moment. I imagine it would be a quarter goal favorite. That's what I've been staring at the whole time. Juve probably will get back there before this ends up kicking off as a quarter goal underdog, I would expect. And I'm interested in Juventus because they haven't gotten a ton of respect in their road matches so far. I mean, even against Sporting Lisboa in the last round, I feel like they were an underdog, and I played Juventus and under and hit both, and it was a really, really nice feeling. I'm hoping to do one of those again. Problem is Sevilla are not a defensive team, so I don't really expect that to be a great scenario. Over on this one is 2.25, which I do lean to under, especially because I think Juventus, once they take a lead, they sit on it. We've seen that happen so many times, even against inferior sides. Sevilla will be gunning for them, and they'll be trying really hard to break that deficit, and deserve a lot of credit for taking their lead and literally holding on until a center back bundled in the goal at the end, seemingly during stoppage time, if not past when stoppage time should have been blown for the final whistle. But that's sort of what happened, and they kind of came from behind themselves to get it to salvage a draw at Manchester United. So maybe this is a kind of pendulum swinging the other way. But I'm very interested in Juventus just because I think they're a better defensive side. I think there are real problems in the Sevilla defense, which will not be fixed in a couple of days, and certainly won't be fixed when the manager, Jose Luis Mendilibar, is so aggressive with playing such a high line. Now, Juventus don't really have the pace that you'd really be scared of. I think Kostic could certainly be that, but again, he's a wingback, so it's not really the striker or like winger up top that would be most scary. I mean, if they somehow played another wingback, I just don't think they would balance that lineup, though they did this weekend, and Kostic was on the bench. But in terms of two advanced number, Juve are now an underdogs. They initially were a -140 favorite, got as high as -170. Sevilla are now -125 to advance, so $125 wins you 100. They were as low as +140 to get through. So this is pretty much completely flipped the number based on Sevilla getting a draw on the road, and it's essentially paying for home pitch advantage, if you will. Currently, Sevilla -125, Juventus +105. I'm interested in that +105 as well as the side, as well as the under, I got to say. So I guess I'm interested in Juventus in a lot of different ways. It's going to be a hard situation going on the road, but I feel like Sevilla has gotten a lot of results over months and months that haven't really been because they're great players. It's really, they're a good team for sure. I just feel like a lot of it's been good fortune, like stealing a win late on a ridiculous mistake at Athletic Club in San Mamés. I mean, that was huge, but made everything look a lot better for Sevilla than it actually is. Plus, I feel like that late concession puts them in a really tough position when leading 1-0 with an away victory would have been huge for them to get through. I don't think it's going to be that easy. So Juve +0.25, Juve under 2.25, and Juve +105. All things I'm interested in on Thursday. And we'll see. Hang around a little bit longer. And we'll see if I'll make anything from that match as my best bet from the Europa League. So I'll move next to where I have some money on the line already, with Bayer Leverkusen hosting AS Roma. I think it's probably Association Sportive de Roma, whatever it would be in Italian. Sorry, I don't speak it. Shop so much. I can speak Italian, except I don't. I took Roma even money to get through to advance. That's been a good bet so far because it's moved all the way to -165 from a +100. But ultimately, that was from a 1-0 victory. It was tight. I felt like Roma were the better side, but ultimately, it just didn't really feel like that safe for a little bit. There's certainly some times where I was concerned about Leverkusen, and they're an all offense, all attack side. So they're in good position because they know how to attack. That's all they do. But I also feel like this sets up really well for a Roma counterattack. And they certainly have great players. Doesn't really seem like Paulo Dybala is going to be starting anytime soon, or probably the rest of the season, but he's quite the spark plug to come off the bench. I do feel like, though, if Roma fall behind, and we're level 1-1 on aggregate, that they're still probably going to play pretty conservatively and try to catch Bayer Leverkusen out. what that'll essentially do is certainly make them open for counterattack opportunities, which will be huge for them, but also makes Leverkusen really have the ability to take a lot of shots without a lot of replies. So it's a big deal for Roma to get a set piece goal or some sort of goal to start this off. And that not essentially, it won't essentially kill the tie, but certainly will change things and make everyone will probably raise the likelihood of goals in this matchup. I think if Leverkusen score first, Roma probably play pretty defensively. But if Roma score first, Leverkusen are going to throw everything forward, probably even the goalkeeper, Lukas Hradecky, from the beginning. In terms of the spread for this one, Roma currently half a goal underdog right now with all the juice right now, maybe climbing, or excuse me, maybe falling to a quarter goal favorite, but Leverkusen falling to a quarter goal favorite, Roma falling to a quarter goal underdog. But Leverkusen being favored despite not having the first leg at home, I think makes me feel like this number is going to stick around a little bit longer. I don't know that enough changed based on that first result that everything would go the other way. But also the juice is pretty high right now. It's potential to fall down to a quarter before this kicks off. And I feel like that's probably fair. The marketplace basically considering these teams equal, though clearly they weren't in the first leg because Roma were an underdog with the first leg at home to advance. Over-under's 2.25 on this one, split juice both ways. It's a low total, extremely low for Leverkusen, but after seeing a 1-0 final in that first leg, they're going to be pushing forward, but Roma are going to do everything they can to stall this game out, Mourinho style, and try to hold on to that 1-goal advantage. I'm interested in Roma, I think, just because I feel like they can get easy chances on goal with the counterattack, probably not many of them. And they're going to certainly batten down the hatch and try to defend. And I don't like the idea if they're losing 1-0, if they try to go to extra time, because these bets are on the spreads are graded at the end of 90 minutes plus stoppage time. I do feel like there's probably a little more safety in under 2.25, just because you get the chance of Roma scoring an equalizer or taking a lead, Leverkusen equalizing, and then the game finishing before it gets to extra time. Where you could win that under bet. Certainly, though, if this is Leverkusen going on a rating mission or falling behind, that under is in deep trouble. I think if Leverkusen score first, it's probably best of the two teams scoring for the under. But ultimately, this is also a tournament cup game, and it's a big deal when these two teams are trying to fight forward to get that automatic bid to the Champions League, because I think it's going to matter for both of these sides. In terms of 2 advance, I already said, jump to that initially, but Roma minus 165 right now, Leverkusen plus 145. I don't blame you if you like Leverkusen. You might want to play the plus 145 to advance rather than them to play. Certainly, you might be on your way to extra time if they win in regulation. That would have paid you out with that bet on the minus 1/2. But I mean, it's a better juice. Certainly, you win less of these at a lower percentage rate, you can become more profitable than you would with a even money minus 1/2. And you would be favored at home, most likely in the penalty shootout with a plus 145 ticket in your pocket. So I wouldn't blame you for that. I do feel like a draw, everyone goes home though, and you lose the 2 advance number, but you lose the Leverkusen side as well. So it might be one of those you trade the plus 145 ticket for something that you would have to win in regulation. I don't know, up to you. I lean the other way though. I feel like I just don't like sides that play the way Leverkusen do. They don't defend enough. They don't have great defenders, so they have to do something about that to be winning matches, and clearly wasn't working for Jerome Seoane earlier in the season. I'm not sure that Xabi Alonso has done that amazing of things. I think Leverkusen are a good team and better than most of the teams in the Bundesliga. So eventually things turned around once they started to get some momentum. But he's been applauded as and praised as this genius. I'm not sure, coming from Real Sociedad's youth system, that says a lot. But I also feel pretty good about holding a Roma ticket that's very in the money at the moment. Certainly it's not paid out yet. I could hedge with Leverkusen to advance ticket, but I don't think I really want to do that. Hedging is for gardeners, and certainly it's not a life-changing amount of money for me on this one, but certainly a standard unit play and something I'm rooting for. But I think I'm interested in Roma getting that half of a goal, and I like the under 2.25 a little bit as well. As for my best bet for the Europa League, though, I'm going to go with Juventus getting a quarter of a goal on the road at Sevilla. I just am not as concerned with Sevilla as I think a lot of people would be, and I'm kind of surprised that they're a favorite, even though they're at home and kind of outplayed Juventus in that first leg. Now I'll move to the UEFA Conference League. I still got a shout out for a Patreon subscriber, coming up. Plus, I'll sum them up all up in a quick little section for YouTube, or no, for Instagram, but also to get an ultimate best bet out there so you can hold me to the fire if that one doesn't win. We'll start in the Conference League with Basel hosting Fiorentina. And I mean, kind of crazy, but seeing Basel take a 2-1 victory on the road at Fiorentina, huge. Fiorentina responded with a good result this weekend, though Udinese were awful. So I don't really know. They feel like a team that doesn't really care what they're doing. And you got to be aware of that, but doesn't really happen in this competition where everyone seems to try. And that is something that is very important to me, because you can't really win bets if you are trying your best to know who cares and who doesn't, unless you're really good at predicting that. But I don't know. It's really hard to do. Anyway, Basel, a 3/4 goal underdog at home with a 2-1 aggregate advantage. Road goals don't matter, but still up one. So this is saying that they can lose by a single goal and you will lose half of your bet at plus 3/4. Over under is 2 3/4. Juice the over, more juice on the home team Basel, and also the over. Fiorentina, I haven't really been in love with this year, to say the least. They've done and gotten better results in Europe than they certainly have in Serie A. They're kind of a mid-table team, maybe in like 8th place or so in Serie A. But I haven't done great fading them, I'll admit. I do feel like this is a side where I want Basel to go through for sure, but it also would complicate things and make the final less bettable, I feel like, unless you're looking to bet a big underdog that's probably got a very different balance sheet than whoever they play in the next round, which looks like West Ham. But anyway, Fiorentina, I mean, they have great attackers. There's a lot of social media problems, I guess, between Luka Jovic for not getting into the match that they lost in the first leg. Probably it's Italiano, the manager, I think, unless I'm confusing him with the Napoli one. But anyway, whoever it was, their manager, probably trying to focus on Serie A and try to get through as well. But I do think this is the competition that matters most to them. Confidence from the weekend is huge, but they go on the road and it's going to be a battle. They have to win. They have to push forward. I expect they'll control most of the ball anyway, despite being the road team. I think if I'm interested in Basel, I'm looking for it to hit +1 before I get involved, because that would ultimately get you to extra time with a push, which would be huge. Don't have that yet, so the 3/4 is not as interesting to me. So I think if I had to make a bet in this one, I'm going to be interested in the under 2 3/4. Also, I might as well go through the 2 advanced number, which definitely changed quite a bit, because Fiorentina were a pretty big favorite, -260 initially, as high as -325. Now are a +125 underdog. 100 wins you 125. So it's flipped. That, of course, would happen with home field advantage, home pitch advantage, and a one goal aggregate lead. But this is a good test for Fiorentina to wake up and try to do something. Next is AZ Alkmaar, a Dutch side hosting West Ham, currently a pick'em, with a little bit more juice on Alkmaar at home. Over under is 2.5, juice the under. And this is an interesting one. West Ham up 2-1 from the first leg, had a nothing performance on the weekend at Brentford, but ultimately weren't playing their best side. And gotta say, I need to note to self, if teams are not taking a match seriously, their defense is going to suffer as well. It was a miracle, felt like, that the under covered, but good for us, especially if you rode along with me. Thank you, Patreon subscribers, if you were with me. I hope you got that one as well. With that said, West Ham is almost safe. I mean, they're not exactly safe yet. And teams at the bottom of the Premier League keep winning. I wouldn't have taken that match off, but clearly they are very interested in winning the Europa Conference League. It would be huge to get a trophy, of course. You get a berth in the Europa League next season. That also would be huge. But still, they're not safe. And I do feel like need to be looking over their shoulder a little bit at the Premier League. Well, they're going to a Dutch town, I believe. That's where AZ is. Somewhere in the Eredivisie. They have a 2-1 aggregate lead, but are going on the road, and Dutch crowds, they come out in force. So it's going to be a tough matchup. I really feel like West Ham, if they get through this matchup, hopefully in extra time, would be a great fade this weekend, but we're not there yet. Pretty much West Ham, I expect them to play a very defensive brand of football like they did against a Belgian side in the last round. I'm trying to remember exactly who it was. I think it was Union Saint-Gilloise. They honestly went on the road and played about as poor of a game of football, yet took a lead because I think Uno Central just doesn't have the type of professional that plays in the Premier League. Not a shocker, I'm sure, but some big mistakes, especially by the goalkeeper, put them in a good position, but ultimately because he didn't equalize and then held on for dear life, really. I expect them to be very conservative here, and I think that makes me very interested in the under. Not a surprise with the West Ham side, especially because they should be having their better defenders out in this one, or playing in this one would be the way to put it, rather than out. I think in terms of, I'll get to the 2 advanced number in a little bit, but I just have never really believed in David Moyes as an offensive manager. I don't think anyone does. And so that's not a huge surprise that I'd be interested in under involving them. But I think certainly they're going to be, West Ham will be set up to counterattack, and they have the ability to go score goals. And if they score 1, it probably gets out of hand because odds said then have to push forward to get 2 more, which if they get 2 would even kill my bet there. But I do feel like as a pick 'em at home, pretty close, almost split juice. There's not a lot of high expectations for AZ Alkmaar at this point. So I think that there clearly is a big difference in balance sheets for these 2 sides as well, based on the league they play in. I'll get to the 2 advanced number now. So West Ham were minus 200 initially. I saw them as high as 205. It climbed to minus 330 after that victory, though it was at home. So it's kind of taking care of business where you should have. AZ Alkmaar had climbed from plus 160 all the way to plus 260. It's come down a little bit more. The juices are getting, or the spreads are getting smaller. The margins are getting a little bit smaller, the handle percentage, but currently seeing West Ham minus 290 and AZ Alkmaar plus 230 to advance. So pretty long shot, I think, for Alkmaar, because you pretty much have to win by 2 goals in regulation or hope to get through a deeper side in extra time or in penalties. The nice part is you will have a big crowd behind you, and that will certainly help with energy levels and things of that nature. But I think my biggest interest on that matchup is the under 2.5. So now it's time for the ultimate best bet. Before we get in there, I want to remind, if you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. And got a shout out, as I promised, Patreon subscribers. Kevin Welsh coming in, where I think you're going to be your 3-month anniversary tonight. Thanks for coming in, especially when I started this thing initially. It's been a wild ride so far, hoping to keep going as long as possible. And of course, I know you're one of the more outspoken of the Patreon subscribers or the patrons. So thank you for that support. Thank you for anything that you've been telling me that I need to do a little bit differently, because it's helped. And I think everyone else would be really appreciative as well. Thanks for sticking around. Hopefully we can keep making some money. Cheers to you on that one. And I think it's now probably time for me to stop, I guess, loving on everybody and start giving you guys what you're all looking for. So I'm the real _G Warner on Twitter. This is Betting the Pitch number 196, going through the European competitions this week and trying to figure out some best bets. In the Champions League, I'm going to go with Real Madrid plus 1 goal. In the Europa League, Juventus getting 1/4 of a goal, and West Ham United a 2.5 under 2.5 in the Europa Conference League. And while it's not the sexiest competition, I'm going to go with the West Ham under 2.5. They put out a nothing lineup on Sunday. I think this is going to be a much different situation with a single goal lead on aggregate, going on the road to the Netherlands or to Holland, and they're going to do their best to try to keep this as low scoring as possible, keep a clean sheet, and they're through to the Europa Conference League final. I think that's exactly how they're going to play. They want to set up in a counterattacking situation. They really score goals a lot of times from mistakes or set pieces, which are low expected goal totals. I think it's going to be really hard for a smaller club to go get a victory, even at home with a big crowd. So play under 2.5 on that West Ham match at AZ Alkmaar on Thursday in the Europa Conference League. And that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for sticking around. Appreciate all the support as always. Follow me on Twitter, the real _G Warner, on Instagram, same thing. Anywhere on Patreon, that's where I'm at. Highly recommend checking that out. Got baseball stuff coming out there every night, and probably for the next 4 months, because we're going on forever in that season. Soccer is winding down, but this is the time to make money, where all these clubs, you know what they need. And I feel like that does play into the psyche of the market, and they get it wrong a lot. So thanks for the support, and get working on the baseball card right now. And I will talk to you all soon. Slide in the DMs if you need anything. But as always, thanks for the support, and I will look forward to talking to you on Thursday for a baseball podcast and probably Friday for a soccer one. Stay tuned.